Starting things off with Chantel Smith. Shan is one of those players that the Survivor community is split right down the middle on, as you're either completely obsessed with her or never want to see her face again. Like Sarah and Tony from Winners at War, it's always fun to see how pre-existing relationships play out, and I would love to see how Shan would interact with another player we'll be talking about later in the video. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This dream cast won't just be random players thrown into the mix, taking inspiration from International Survivor with the South African version. This dream cast will be themed Return of the Outcasts. If you're unfamiliar with the theme, there's a few rules involved. Only one-time players needed to be voted out, 20-person cast, no winners, one tribe filled with pre-merge players, one tribe filled with post-merge players, and a bonus rule to build new Survivor legends. All players must be from season 25 and beyond. And because this entire theme is based on International Survivor, we are joined today by the Nullified Take to break it all down. I'll be covering all the post-merge players, and the Nullified Take will be covering all the pre-merge players.
Zane played in Survivor Philippines and was the very first boot. He effectively played himself out of the game. He tried to make a reverse psychology case for voting him out instead of Russell Swan. His strategy of trying to turn the vote around in the shadows and to get his tribe to keep him was a crazy one. Next up, I'm bringing back Alan Ball. Now, some of you may say, who? He was voted out in 4th place, but he made a big impression in those early stages. He came into the game forming an alliance with JP, and then, soon after, left that behind when he accused JP and Ashley of being a power couple and having an idol. He was the first ever contestant who made another contestant strip in front of him to prove his innocence. Alan is one of those forgotten characters of Survivor that may never get another shot at redemption. Next up, I'm asking this castaway to pick up his purple pants and head down to the island. Voted out in 3rd place on Survivor Cagayan, Bryce Isaiah came into that season like a cannonball and had some of the best confessionals early on. He was ultimately voted out due to his social capabilities and his tribe seeing him as a weak physical player. The main reason Bryce would be an appealing choice for a season such as this is due to his social connections outside of the game. He stays in touch with the Survivor community and hosts many events with former winners like Wendell Holland. Next up is JD Robinson. JD Robinson was the 5th voted out castaway for Survivor 41. JD made an impression on me this season as someone that I felt like I could relate to. He was charismatic, energetic, and a Survivor nerd. He ultimately wanted to be remembered as one of the greats, like an Aussie. Having idolized those that came before him, he put himself in difficult position to clutch out the win for his tribe, but fell short every time. Joaquin had all the potential to be a great villain in his season. With his car salesman-like charm, he fooled many people early on and even turned the tide back in his favor with players like Tyler and Carolyn, who they were trying to blindside at the first vote. His confessionals and observations were hilarious at times. He ultimately was voted out in 5th place after the tribe swap, and I would like to see if he could turn things around on a second go.
Now on to the post-merge females. We've already placed Shan Smith on this tribe, and now Trish from Survivor Cagayan will be joining her. Trish adds an unknown factor to this season, with being a key factor in Tony Nacho's first win, and occasionally demonstrating bursts of confrontation. And the Cagayan lover in me wants to see her return as being the only player from the final 6 of that season not to return for a future season. Next up, we have Lauren O'Connell. The theme of this season is insanely similar to second chances and not wanting to waste the opportunity. Lauren O'Connell is one of those players that was set up perfectly with the edge of extinction and got screwed over by that twist at the end. Youngest woman to find a hidden immunity idol, eligible to be voted out 15 times. That's the most ever. The only thing screwing her over was the knowledge Chris Underwood was given from Wentworth when they were out of the game. Next up, we have Elaine Stott from Survivor Island of the Idols. I know, bad season, but other than a single disgusting human being, this was a great group of players. Elaine was seen as a huge social threat the entire game for how likable she was, and still managed to make the final 7. I think if given the second chance, if she was able to make it through the first couple of rounds, Elaine would be a huge threat to win the game. Next up, we have Desi Williams from Survivor HHH. Honestly, Desi is the type of player I would initially not consider for a returning season, being fairly quiet early on and voted out shortly after the merge for being too big of a physical threat. But after watching her compete on the Challenge USA, I am convinced that Desi needs a second shot at playing Survivor.
We are bringing back the only good thing that came from the Edge of Extinction, Reem daily. She lasted the whole game on the edge of extinction. She wouldn't be intimidated or stand back to anyone. Reem is a fan of the show that was voted out on day one. I would like to see her come back, and dare I say she may be my favorite. Next up, Chelsea Walker. Chelsea Walker was voted out in 4th place on Island of the Idols. As a fan of the show, she started the game fast and created a bond with the women in the tribe, and she even found an idol without anyone knowing. However, her close relationship with Dean from her season was seen as a potential showman's and a threat that needed to be taken care of. Being voted out with an idol in her pocket and having so much more game in her makes her the perfect castaway to join the Premerger tribe. Next up, I would like to bring back Natalia from David vs. Goliath, who was the 3rd boot of that season. Natalia was a strong player in her season and someone who wanted to take control of the votes early on. Her bossy personality ended up being her downfall. It would be interesting to see if Natalia could rein her personality in on a second chance season. Next up, So Kim from Worlds Apart. She formed an early connection with Joaquin from her season as they both volunteered to be early leaders of their tribe. As we know it though, in Survivor, being a leader frequently puts you at risk, and being in a position of authority with Joaquin meant that they had to make a decision on taking an early advantage in the game or more food for their tribe. They did what any real gamers would do in that situation. They took the advantage, but they were horrible at telling the lie in camp, which ultimately led to So being voted out in 1st place. Next up, Nadia Anderson. Nadia Anderson is the sister of the ultimate winner of Survivor's Son John Del Sur, with Nadia being voted out in 1st place and his sister Natalie becoming one of the all-time players in Survivor. It would make for intriguing TV to see how she would go on in a second attempt.
Starting things off for the post-merge males, we have Rick Devins. First of all, this will cause amazing initial drama between former tribe mates Lauren O'Connell, and if they make it far enough into the game, Reem Daly as well. Rick Devins will be coming into this season a leg up over the rest of the field, already being voted out of the game. You can tell he didn't want to waste his return from the edge of extinction, and I think we would witness the exact same gameplay this time around, only it would start at day 1. Next up, we have Ricard from Survivor 41. Same idea, different people, just like how the interaction between Rick, Lauren, and Reem would be priceless. I think it would be a crime if we never get to watch Ricard and Sham play Survivor together again. There's just too much history playing Survivor together and then going back and forth on social media, and to put the cherry on top, all the way on the other tribe will be their BFF JD. Next up, we have Josh Camfield from Survivor San Juan del Sur. I'll admit, Josh is the most out there pick I included in this dream cast. Josh's story is pretty similar to Jeremy Collins. They were running the show this season only to both get targeted just after the merge. And just like how Jeremy took full advantage of his second chance and won the game, I could see Josh doing the same thing. Next up, we have Omar Zahir from Survivor 42. It needs to be stated that this group of post-merge males is the most stacked of all the groups in this dream cast, with so many different possibilities to choose from. I'm interested to see how Omar would perform in a returning season after all the players now realize how much of a gamer he truly is. Next up, we have Christian Obiki from Survivor David vs. Goliath. There isn't much you can say about Christian that hasn't already been said, as he's a guaranteed lock for any future all-star season of Survivor. Anyway, do you agree with this dream cast? Let me know in the comments down below with any changes you would make, and click right here for my Survivor vs. Big Brother dream cast.